I'd like to spend a few moments thinking about the character of Daisy. I'd like to also spend some time thinking about our close reading steps, the routine that we should largely follow whenever we come to any kind of passage that requires our deeper evaluations of the text's meaning. And I want to spend a few moments showing my line-by-line reading of the passage that I gave you for homework, the introduction of Daisy in Chapter 1. So let's start by thinking about the character of Daisy. The first thing that I would say is that Daisy's character is very complex. There are a range of readings of her character, and I would encourage you to develop your own interpretation of her character based on your very good knowledge of the book. For me, her character is an ambivalent one, in many ways paradoxical. Firstly, I think we can see that Fitzgerald's skill as a writer allows him to bring to life a character of this kind of complexity and subtlety and ambiguity. And it becomes quite exciting to respond to a literary figure like Daisy Buchanan because of this. There's an allure about her, I think, for us as readers. When I chose this image, I think there were things that the image represented for me that allows me to introduce this passage effectively. So some of the things that I'd like to note. Well, firstly, Daisy's beauty. In many ways, her beauty is of the age. She's a beautiful woman of the 1920s. In many ways, she is an embodiment of this new form of female beauty, the flapper. Yet also when we look at her, we recognise that there is some kind of hint of sadness in the face. What I recognise about Daisy is this deeply held sadness that is of course a product of her situation and a product of the choices that she has made for her life. Her choice has been to marry a wealthy man, and her costuming indicates that she is a woman of great wealth. But the issue that we confront is that Daisy's marriage to Tom is at one and the same time her choice, but also we are shown that she bows to society's pressure, and especially the pressure of her family, to marry this man. We infer when Jordan relates the episode of her marriage that Daisy was deeply divided between her love for Gatsby and her wish to marry a man of high status, and that also that this wish is a product of her family's wishes as well. So it seems that America, demonstrated by Daisy, is a place of social hierarchy. As much as the myth of America would have us believe that anyone can make it in America and that it is the land of the free, the egalitarian society. And I think that this marrying for money and the pressures attendant on that decision to marry for money is represented in the image by, of course, these ornate bars of some kind of gate. And I think it's interesting that they seem to be some kind of gold plate, gold leaf, and that this gold leaf is peeling away. It seems to me that this symbolizes the corruption of this American situation, that this marrying for money imprisons Daisy. It confines her. What I would say, though, about this is that this confinement is a psychological one. And we must remember that she still chooses Tom, and she does so by novel's end. She chooses him again over Gatsby. But it seems that this choice is informed by tragic perspectives on the world. That status and power and material ease are preferable to the possession of an equal loving relationship. So I hope that those comments do something to frame the work that we do on her character and can provide some sort of foundation for our study of the passage in a moment. I'd like to run through the close reading steps. I really encourage you to have a routine that you know works for you. If it were me, these are the things that I would do. I would read the text three times to establish its general meaning and to establish the general technical choices the author makes. What I mean by this is that we should try and pick what governs the passage. Is it setting? Is it characterization and character relationship? Is it the interplay between both? Is it some kind of key plot event that drives the narrative forward? You need to make those decisions at a general level quite early. It's important that you nominate the subject, a single word or phrase that tries to encapsulate what the text's meaning is. Later we embellish this by looking at the concept of theme, but to get a subject named early on is very important. After that you conduct a line-by-line reading that I'll show you in a moment, and it's at this point that you identify the fine detail of the text, both in terms of technique and the effects of those techniques. And we remember that those fine techniques, line by line, word by word, phrase by phrase, will contribute to those bigger schemes that we've already identified. So setting, so characterization, so a key plot event. And those all contribute to the theme that we apprehend as a reader. Now we move to evaluate, to judge the governing theme of the passage, and this can be, a couple of sentences, 3 sentences, even more sometimes, in which we really get out the nature of the passage's intended meaning. So we remember that theme is the intended meaning of the author. After that, we conduct a more structural, across the text meaning to say that we look across and we notice paragraph by paragraph what the author is doing to influence meaning. It might be that one paragraph is focused on some particular thing and that the author is using the range of techniques we've identified to achieve that issue. Often when we do this, we find that we start to formulate the argument structure that we will run, that will usually loosely follow the structure of the text itself, because it will follow some kind of logic itself. And the last phase is to plan our argument and argument structure. The argument should assert theme, but before that, I think you should get out and lay down the major choices the author makes in developing the theme that you identify. So theme tends to be developed towards the end of the introduction, after you've established what the key technical aspects are. And you should have some kind of understanding of the points you're going to deal with in sequential order. This is very important when you come to do any kind of assessment work, because it literally becomes some kind of reference point in the midst of the anxiety that can often come when you're running assessment, you're performing some kind of assessment. So let me take you through my line-by reading of the first two paragraphs of the passage. So we walk through a high hallway into a bright, rosy-coloured space, fragilely bound into the house by French windows at either end. What I notice is the inclusive pronoun we. So Tom and Nick move through the house, through a high hallway, into this living area, this bright, rosy-coloured space. Now, the architectural features are apparent to me. I noticed the alliteration with high hallway. The height of the stud leading through the building suggests its grandeur. And Nick's recognition that the space that he enters is bright. And I think this idea of brightness is important. I think it suggests both a place of beauty, of ebullience, but also this is his view. So we have his subjective judgment of the place. So he sees it as bright. And I think that throughout the passage we have this heightened reality sense to the text, and it makes me think that his senses are well attuned because of this his introduction to this high society household. He is really being some sort of flooded with this new experience. Of course, the pre-modifying adjective rosy-coloured takes the eye. This is a compound adjective. See that the hyphen with rosy-coloured, and I think the word rose is important. It's sort of a very feminine description, and has resonances of beauty, and seems to define the space as a feminine space. Now I think that this is extended then by the adverb fragilely bound into the house by French windows at either end. Yet I think that this introduces a new dimension. I think the word bound begins this motif of confinement that we have in the text, certainly when Tom enters, of course. So already I think Fitzgerald is establishing this ambiguity between beauty, grandeur, and also some sort of sense of a space confined, extended then later to the people. The French windows also catch my eye. It's an American house, but as we've already seen with the Gatsby mansion, there is a lot of borrowing that goes on. Architecture from the continent copied here in this new land, this new world, America. The windows were ajar and gleaming white against the fresh grass outside that seemed to grow a little way into the house. So now we have more colour imagery. Again, the pre-modifying adjective gleaming seems to associate with the bright rosy coloured space. Now we have the new colour white that communicates freshness and cleanness, purity, and contrastive against what Nick describes as the fresh grass, the green, vibrant grass outside. That it seems to grow a little way into the house seems to me suggest that the house is somehow knitted into the environment, that it's aesthetically harmonious, if you like, harmonious with its surroundings. I think this word gleaming is quite important because I think it also suggests still this heightened reality that Nick experiences and relates to us in his narrative. A breeze blew through the room, blew curtains in at one end and out the other like pale flags, twisting them up toward the frosted wedding cake of the ceiling, and then rippled over the wine-colour rug, making a shadow on it as wind does on the sea. The first thing I notice is that the sentence is much longer than the previous ones. The syntax is flowing, moving, much like the subject of the sentence, this breeze that Nick describes. So I think that the syntax seems to mimic Nick's remembrance of the experience of watching the wind blow through the room. I think the repetition of blue is important because it emphasizes movement, and actually throughout the passage we see this motif, a motif of movement, of animation, that I think also contributes to Nick's special memory of this beautiful, impressive space, that he notices the effects of the wind on items like the curtains, suggests that he is intensely aware of the surroundings, and why I think it is because it is such a uniquely resplendent place. I think the simile like pale flags contributes to that reading, because flags we associate with nationhood, with some kind of grand scene, some sort of ceremonial scene, and it seems to me that the curtains are of such a size and that the wind's effect on them are reminiscent of the movement of flags, maybe it's some kind of ceremonial, in some sort of ceremonial situation. But again, the intensity of Nick's memory, he remembers them twisting up towards the frosted wedding cake of the ceiling, and then rippled over the wine-coloured rug, making a shadow in it as wind does on the sea. So we notice again the richness of the place. Wine-coloured, I think wine especially suggests high society and the richness of the red colour of the rug. The movement being so aesthetically pleasing, rippled in this case. It's sort of this quite gentle, beautiful movement. And then what also I find interesting is that he relates this movement to the wind and its effects on an ocean. And I think the metaphor reveals his state of mind, that he is experiencing a grand situation, much like, if you like, the grandeur of the sea and its interactions with the natural elements of the wind. So my reading of paragraph 1. So far what I've tried to do is notice syntax, parts of speech like verbs and adjectives, imagery, and I've tried to explore their effects. And I would just be noting these things in the margins, of course. Let me deal with the second paragraph. The only completely stationary object in the room was an enormous couch on which 2 young women were buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon. So there's a shift in the narrative now. So rather than comments on the architecture, there is focus put on 2 as yet to be named women, and the enormous couch catches my eye because it seems, as Nick says, to be the only stationary object in the room. So the women are placed on this fixed object, and they don't move either. So they are outliers. They are different. And it seems to me that their lack of movement is quite important, because it's as though this idea of them being buoyed up as though upon an anchored balloon, I find an arresting simile. I think because it communicates both their beauty, but also their limitation, because it's as though they're somehow transcendent, they're buoyed up, they're sort of above the world, but they are kept, they're held, they're anchored. And I think that subtly begins to convey what this character of Daisy especially is like, that she is somehow transcendent. She takes your eye. She has a charisma about her, but she is somehow confined. She's somehow limited. Now this is only hinted at here, but if we read on in the paragraph, they were both in white, so this white colour imagery becomes a motif. We've seen it already here in paragraph 1. It seems that they are like the place, pure, fresh. White might start to associate with femininity in that case. We see that their dresses are affected by the wind like the curtains are. The word rippling finds its repeat here in the second paragraph. So Fitzgerald seems to be associating the appearance of the women with the house that they are found within. This strategy of creating what we call an objective correlative, where the setting somehow is a projection of a character, is one that Fitzgerald uses throughout the text. We see it, of course, with Gatsby's Mansion, also in chapter 1. But it's interesting that what Fitzgerald then does, he writes of them as so beautiful like the house, and then he writes as if they had just been blown back in after a short flight around the house. And this is really rather a deflating addition. It makes them quite almost comical, that somehow they're like some sort of model plane that has done some sort of circuit of the house and has just returned. So I find this moment sort of quite a change in tone, where Fitzgerald is showing a new dimension, that these women are somehow comical. And I think this is much to do with their staged behaviour as well. I think that what we find in this passage is that, especially the Jordan Baker figure, maintains this aloofness on purpose. It's as though she's trying to control this new man who comes into the space, Nick Carraway, and Fitzgerald just in this moment, diminishes the women. Takes away, removes from them their appearance of beauty and status. Nick writes, "I must have stood for a few moments listening to the whip and snap of the curtains and the groan of a picture on the wall." These these adjectives, whip and snap of the curtains and the groan of a picture on the wall, continues this changed tone. Whip and snap, these onomatopoeic words, are violent in meaning. So quite changed to the rippling and fluttering movement that we've had only in the previous sentence. And this word groan, I think, is significant. Now the house seems to be in some kind of even pain. And I think that these images, controlled by the onomatopoeia, and this emotional word groan, sets the scene for Tom's entrance. If the house is somehow an objective correlative for the women, they are also objective correlative for him. And when he enters, Fitzgerald employs onomatopoeia again, and we have this word boom, this powerful, this word that communicates violent sound. As he enters, the animation dies out, the movement dies out. He shuts the rear windows. It's as though he closes the house up. It seems to sort of have a sense of imprisonment to me. He shuts the rear windows, and you see this metaphor of a caught wind emphasizes this, and it dies out about the room. So we've got these new metaphors of confinement and entrapment, of death, and the consequence is that the curtains and the rugs and the two young women ballooned slowly to the floor, that the reality of the place as Tom enters, as Tom becomes inserted into this place, changes. That we have this deflation that occurs. Look at the sentence, look at the syntax. You see the run-on sentence that Fitzgerald creates with the and repeating. It's an unusual construction. And so the items of the room that we've been exposed to already, the curtains, the rugs, aspects of the building, and the two young women, they are all linked syntactically by the run-on sentence. The and are all affected by the entrance of Tom Buchanan. Now, I've written that power is a subject. I think that here, by the end of paragraph 2, we recognise that there is a deeper controlling influence here in this place, this grand house, and it is the influence of the male figure, Tom Buchanan. The women have their own power. It's a power defined by their beauty. They seem to be above the world. They seem to be somehow transcendent. But their power is a softer power, and it is shown to be controlled by something much more significant, and that is the presence of the male figure Tom Buchanan.